Rebecca asked me to play tonight, and I said, well, I've got a lot on my mind that I want to say, and I want to talk about Cuba and my experiences there, and falling in love with it, and falling in love there, and all of this stuff. And then I sat down to write, and I wrote about my mother. So here we go. Last September, we lost my mom for a couple of days. First an infection, and then the hospital, then my dad calling, telling me to get on a plane. When I landed at O'Hare, no one would return my messages. She must be dead, I thought, and they don't want to text. I met my dad and oldest sister outside her room on the 3rd floor of Glenbrook Hospital, down the hall from the room she stayed in 6 months before, when she went on dialysis. We should warn you, she's not herself, Laura said before I went in. My mom was a body, skinny under a gown that gaped in back, wearing the hospital socks that she loves. Her eyes stared past me. It was late, and we convinced our exhausted dad to go home and get some sleep. Laura made me take the fold-out bed, and she sat back in the chair across from me. We spent the night in a fog, like the early days of motherhood, sleeping lightly, on high alert. At every movement or sound, we would startle awake, catch each other's eyes, and wait without breathing to see if Mom was going to try to get up. Sitting up and dragging her legs to the edge of the bed was a major effort, so we usually had enough time to get to her side and try to coax her back down. She hated this. She hated us. She pleaded. She got angry. She called for my dad pitifully. He'll be back soon, we repeated. As it got later, things got worse. We had to call for the nurse to help her to the bathroom and change her sheets. After the 3rd time, I sat on her bed and held her wrist. Her skin was loose and soft. She looked straight at me and said in Hebrew, "I took the money, Father." Her father has been dead since 1983. So that's how it's going to go now, I thought. Her confessions continued through the night, and my brain wearily pushed English, a little Spanish aside, to get to a tiny bit of Hebrew in the back. In the last months of her life, my grandmother, our family's celebrated polyglot, cycled back through 8 or 9 languages. In the end, she only had her native Polish and Yiddish. Go to sleep, I told my mother in Hebrew. Daylight brought some relief from the nightmare. My dad came back with bagels. We chatted, waiting for the doctor to make his rounds, while Mom finally slept. The doctor strode in, talked to us about the steroids that they were hoping would calm whatever was raging inside her, then sat on the edge of her bed. "Dahlia, hello, good morning." For a full 60 seconds he called, prodded, and finally shook her roughly by the shoulders. We watched in shock. This is it. But then she came back. She didn't know where she was, but at least she was speaking in English. By midday, we learned she had been in adrenal crisis. The steroids fixed it, and she was home within days. My mom seems happier now. She laughs more. Her weight's back above 100. She remembers less and less, but that's been going on for a couple of years. When I look her in the eyes, she is mostly there. There's just a little whisper of something, I don't know. A few weeks ago, I was back in Chicago with my kids. One evening, as I walked behind her chair, she turned to stand and bumped into me. She said automatically, "Slicha." When I was a kid, my mom used to cry when we left Israel. The last time I remember her doing that was when her mother died. As we took off above Tel Aviv, she said tearfully, "One day I'll come back and come and never come back." If I bring this up to her now, she'll deny it. For 50 years, she has read, spoken, and lived in English. Is she going to slip back despite herself? An immigrant so avowedly American that the main targets of her disdain are, you guessed it, immigrants. For how much longer will we cringe when she mutters, "Learn English" in the grocery store line? Will she say it in Hebrew and not even know it? It's a lifelong tug. Genetics versus environment, nature versus nurture, homeland versus chosen land. We move through the world on the tides of circumstance, mooring in different ports. On the same trip to Israel, after my grandmother died, I was in a concert hall in Jerusalem and had the experience of looking around from the balcony and feeling for the first time that I wasn't a minority. Here was a crowd of strangers, and here I was, and I belonged. 2 decades later, I stood in front of a crowd in Havana, very much a minority, but embraced by a similar feeling. Never saw that one coming. In the end, when my eyes are distant, what lines will hold? Does everything just fall away? Sometimes I see it. A little girl sits on the carpet on the second floor of the house on Lincoln Avenue South. She is coloring a cherry bright red. A stream of sunshine falls on the page. It's springtime. I slip my moorings. I belong to me. We have a Yiddish lullaby. And if you want to talk about Cuba after, I'll be back. It's called Raisins and Almonds. To my little one's cradle in the night comes a little goat, snowy and white. The goat will trot to the market, while mother her watch does keep, bringing back raisins and almonds. Sleep, my little one, sleep.